Picture the scene for a moment. It is a really chilly night in Victorian London. The kind where the fog is just, curling around the street lamps outside.
Right.
But inside, everything is warm. You are sitting by this roaring fire. The wine is an excellent vintage, the chairs are plush, and the company consists of intelligent, respectable men.
It feels safe.
Exactly. It feels totally civilized. It feels like the very definition of being, well, quite at ease.
And yet, because this is Robert Louis Stevenson we are talking about, we know that this safety is a complete illusion.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a scene designed to just lull the reader and the characters really into this false sense of security right before the floor drops out from under them.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are pulling up a chair to that very fire to analyze Chapter 3 of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
The chapter titled, with some pretty heavy irony, Dr. Jekyll was quite at ease.
It is such a massive moment in the narrative. I mean, up until this point, Dr. Henry Jekyll has basically been a ghost in his own story.
Yeah, we've seen his name on a mysterious will.
Right.
We've heard people worry about him, but we haven't actually met the man face to face. This is his on-page debut.
And what a debut it is. Our mission for today's deep dive is to decode all these mixed signals Jekyll is sending.
There are so many.
We're going to look at his slyish cast, his incredibly violent reaction to a specific name, and that really complex dynamic between him and our protagonist, Mr. Utterson.
So let's establish the timeline first. We are exactly a fortnight, 2 weeks after the previous events.
After Utterson first encountered the terrifying Mr. Hyde in the street.
Right. The dust has settled a bit. Dr. Jekyll is hosting a dinner party.
Stevenson describes the guest list as 5 or 6 old cronies. I've always loved that word cronies, even though it has a bit of a negative connotation these days.
Yeah, in this context, though, it implies a very tight-knit circle. These aren't just casual acquaintances.
No.
These are men who have known each other for decades. Stevenson makes a point to note they are all intelligent, reputable men and all judges of good wine.
It establishes Jekyll's baseline perfectly.
Exactly. He isn't living on the fringes of society. He is at the absolute center of Victorian respectability.
And naturally, Mr. Utterson is there among them.
Yeah.
But there is a specific detail about Utterson's role at these parties that I think it really changes how we view him.
Oh, the part about him staying behind?
Yes. The text says he contrived to stay behind after the others left, but that this was actually a really common thing, that hosts actually liked detaining Utterson.
It completely breaks that stereotype of him being just a dry, boring lawyer.
Totally.
The text mentions that after the strain of gaiety, people like to sit in Utterson's unobtrusive company.
They practiced for solitude.
Right. They used his rich silence to sort of sober their minds.
The strain of gaiety, that is such a fantastic insight into Victorian society.
It really is.
The idea that having fun, being witty, and constantly keeping up appearances was actually exhausting work.
It was a nonstop performance, and Utterson is the antidote to that performance. He doesn't demand that you be clever or entertaining.
You can just sit with him and be real.
He is a grounding force, and clearly Jekyll really values that grounding, perhaps more than anyone else, because Jekyll's life is becoming increasingly unstable.
So the other guests filter out into the cold London night. It is just Utterson and Jekyll sitting on opposite sides of the fire.
Just the two of them.
And this gives us our first visual description of Henry Jekyll. How does he stack up against the monster we heard about in the previous chapter?
Visually, he is the polar opposite of Hyde.
Totally different.
He is described as a large, well-made, smooth-faced man of 50. He looks capable, wealthy, kind. But, and here's the key insight for this description, Stevenson undermines that perfect image in the very next breath.
Right. He says Jekyll has something of a slyish cast, perhaps.
A slyish cast. In the 19th century, physiognomy was incredibly popular.
The idea that you could literally read a person's character right on their face.
Exactly. A cast refers to a permanent expression or a specific glint in the eye. And the word sly implies concealment.
Like a secret joke.
Or knowing something that others don't.
So even though he is smooth-faced and totally respectable, there is this flicker of deceit right there on the surface.
It signals to the reader immediately that this man is hiding something behind the mask of the gentleman doctor.
Though in this specific moment, his affection for Utterson does seem real. The text says he cherishes a sincere and warm affection for the lawyer.
I think he genuinely does. But that affection hits an absolute brick wall the second Utterson brings up business.
Utterson breaks that comfortable, rich silence, and brings up the one thing Jekyll absolutely does not want to discuss.
The will.
The will that leaves everything to Edward Hyde.
Utterson starts out pretty gently. He says, I have been wanting to speak to you, Jekyll. You know that will of yours.
And Jekyll's reaction is, well, it's honestly theatrical. He tries to laugh it off.
He tries to carry it off gaily.
He's deflecting hard. He calls Utterson poor Utterson and says he is unfortunate in such a client.
He is treating Utterson like a worrying grandmother, just trying to pat him on the head so he'll stop asking uncomfortable questions.
It feels incredibly patronizing. But when the whole don't worry about me tactic doesn't work, Jekyll pivots.
He employs a classic diversion strategy.
He finds a scapegoat.
Exactly. He starts complaining about their mutual friend, Dr. Lanyon.
And he is surprisingly aggressive about it. He calls Lanyon a hidebound pedant and an ignorant, blazant pedant.
For those who might not use the word often, a pedant is someone who is overly obsessed with minor details and rules.
Like a stickler.
Yes, someone who can't see the forest for the trees. But Jekyll is basically accusing Lanyon of being intellectually small.
And he gives a very specific reason for it. He says Lanyon was distressed by Jekyll's scientific heresies.
Scientific heresies, that is such a heavy, loaded term.
Heresy is usually a religious word. It means going against the church or going against God.
Precisely. By using a religious term in a strict scientific context, Stevenson is highlighting the true depth of their rift.
It's not just a disagreement.
No. Lanyon represents traditional material science. Things you can touch, things you can measure.
And Jekyll is dabbling in transcendental medicine, things that break the fundamental laws of nature.
To Lanyon, what Jekyll is doing isn't just bad science. It is literal blasphemy.
So Jekyll is painting himself as the misunderstood visionary here, and Lanyon as the narrow-minded fool. He even says, I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon.
He is justifying his own isolation. He's essentially telling Utterson, the reason I am all alone in this is because Lanyon is too stupid to understand my genius.
But Utterson isn't biting.
Not at all.
And this is what makes Utterson such a formidable character to me. He ruthlessly disregards this entire rant about Lanyon. He just ignores it completely and circles right back to the main issue.
He says, you know I never approved of it, meaning the will.
And Jekyll gets a little sharp here. You can feel the tension rising in the room. He says, my will. Yes, certainly I know that. You've told me so.
He desperately wants this conversation to be over.
But Utterson drops the bomb. He looks right at him and says, I have been learning something of young Hyde.
And this is the moment where that pleasant, warm dinner atmosphere completely evaporates.
The cinematic shift here is just incredible. If you're listening to this in the dark, picture it. The text says the large, handsome face of Dr. Jekyll grew pale to the very lips.
And then the eyes. Stevenson writes, there came a blackness about his eyes.
That image actually gave me chills. A blackness about the eyes.
It creates this incredibly visceral image of dilation. The pupils expanding in sudden, raw terror or rage.
The slyish cast is gone.
The smooth face is gone.
We are seeing the raw, unadulterated fear underneath. The mask has officially slipped.
And he shuts the conversation down instantly. He tells Utterson, I do not care to hear more. This is a matter I thought we had agreed to drop.
It is a massive wall going up, but Utterson pushes one last time. He says, what I heard was abominable.
Now, Jekyll's response to this is fascinating because he doesn't actually deny it.
Right. He doesn't say, no, Hyde is actually a great guy. You just caught him on a bad day.
Instead, he starts babbling about his position.
He becomes genuinely incoherent. This highly articulate, intelligent gentleman doctor starts stumbling over his own words.
He tells Utterson, you do not understand my position. He calls it a strange and painfully situated position.
And then he says the line that really defines his entrapment. He says, it is one of those affairs that cannot be mended by talking.
Think about that from Utterson's perspective for a second.
Okay.
Utterson is a lawyer. His entire worldview, his entire profession, is based on the idea that things can be mended by talking.
By writing contracts, making settlements.
Exactly. Jekyll is essentially telling him, the fundamental rules of your world do not apply to my problem.
Utterson doesn't get that, though. He assumes this is simple blackmail. He thinks Jekyll has some dark skeleton in his closet that Hyde is actively using against him.
So Utterson offers him a lifeline.
He does. He says, Jekyll, you know me. I am a man to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence, and I make no doubt I can get you out of it.
It is a beautifully sincere offer of salvation. Utterson is pleading with his old friend to just let him help.
And Jekyll is moved by it. He really is. He grabs Utterson's hands. He tells him, this is downright good of you. He says he trusts Utterson before any man alive.
And then he adds the kicker.
Aye, before myself.
Which is just tragic foreshadowing. He knows deep down he cannot trust his own impulses.
He knows there's a traitor inside his own mind.
But then comes the hubris, the absolute overconfidence.
After this brief moment of raw vulnerability, he pulls back. The wall goes right back up. He reassures Utterson that the situation isn't actually as bad as he fancies.
And then he makes this incredibly bold claim. He says, the moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde.
The moment I choose.
He gives his hand on it. He makes a solemn promise.
This right here is the absolute crux of the tragedy. Jekyll genuinely believes he is in control.
He views Hyde as just a tool, or a temporary visitor, a distinct entity that he can easily evict whenever he gets tired of him.
He is telling Utterson, I have the steering wheel. I can stop this car whenever I want.
It sounds exactly like the classic language of addiction.
I can quit any time.
Precisely. It is the arrogance of the scientist who thinks he has fully mastered the variable, when in reality, the variable is rapidly mastering him.
He begs Utterson to let the matter sleep. He frames it purely as a private matter.
And Utterson, while he stares into the flickering fire, he reflects on it. The text points out that he keeps that silence for a moment.
And eventually he gets to his feet. He says, I have no doubt you are perfectly right.
He capitulates. Utterson ultimately respects the boundary of their friendship, even though his instincts are screaming at him that something is terribly wrong.
He decides to trust the man he knows, rather than the terrifying evidence he has seen.
But the conversation isn't quite over yet.
No. Just as Utterson is about to leave or move on, Jekyll stops him. He says, well, but since we have touched upon this business, there's one point I should like you to understand.
And this is where the duality of his character becomes truly heartbreaking.
He literally just said he can be rid of Hyde whenever he wants.
But now he pivots to aggressively ensuring Hyde's future.
He admits he has a very great interest in poor Hyde.
Poor Hyde. That specific choice of adjectives suggests pity, or perhaps a deep protective instinct.
It's startling. I mean, everyone else who meets Hyde instantly wants to kill him.
But Jekyll pities him.
He acknowledges that Hyde was rude to Utterson, but he pleads, really, for Utterson to promise something. He says, if I am taken away, promise me that you will bear with him and get his rights for him.
Notice the very specific phrasing there. If I am taken away.
Not if I die.
Right, taken away.
That sounds incredibly ominous. It implies a sudden disappearance or a displacement of some kind.
It does. Jekyll knows that the internal balance is already shifting. He is terrified that he might simply vanish mentally or physically and leave Hyde completely vulnerable.
He is actively planning for a scenario where Henry Jekyll no longer exists, but Edward Hyde does.
He says, I only ask for justice. I only ask you to help him for my sake when I am no longer here.
For my sake. That is the emotional hook.
He knows Utterson hates Hyde. He knows Utterson finds Hyde utterly abominable.
So he leverages their decades of friendship. He's essentially saying, if you love me, you will protect this monster.
And Utterson is trapped. He's an honorable Victorian gentleman. He says, I can't pretend that I shall ever like him.
Which is brutally honest. Utterson refuses to lie about his gut feelings, even to comfort a desperate friend.
But Jekyll presses him. And finally, Utterson heaves an irrepressible sigh.
That sigh. That is the sound of a man going directly against his better judgment.
It is the heavy weight of Victorian honor. He knows it's a terrible idea, but he cannot refuse a friend's dying wish.
Even if the friend is standing right there in front of him, perfectly alive.
And he says, I promise.
And with that, the trap is fully set. Utterson is now legally and morally bound by his honor to protect the very thing that is actively destroying his best friend.
Jekyll has successfully made Utterson an unwitting accomplice.
So let's zoom out for a second as we look back at this scene. We started with warm wine, old cronies, and a profound sense of ease.
And we ended it with a pale, terrified man extracting a reluctant promise to protect a violent villain.
It's a masterclass in narrative tension. Stevenson takes us from the absolute height of comfort to the deepest depths of anxiety in just a handful of pages.
And what really stands out is the stark contradiction in Jekyll himself.
The duality.
Yes. On one hand, I can get rid of him whenever I want.
On the other hand, please ensure he gets all my money when I'm gone.
It reveals the massive lie Jekyll is telling himself. If he could truly get rid of Hyde with a snap of his fingers, he wouldn't need to secure Hyde's legal and financial future.
He is hedging his bets.
He claims to be the master of the house, but he is acting exactly like a servant furiously preparing for his master's arrival.
And that slyish cast we saw on his face at the very beginning.
It's the subtle hint that Jekyll is actually enjoying this on some twisted level, or at least he's jealously hoarding the secret.
He cherishes the dark freedom that Hyde gives him, even as he is visibly terrified of the consequences.
He desperately wants to keep that back door open.
It really makes you look at that initial description of him again. Large, well-made, smooth-faced.
It's nothing but a carefully constructed facade.
A mask. And that blackness about the eyes is what's underneath, just waiting to look out.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 3, we leave Mr. Utterson sitting in the dark with a heavy new burden.
He has promised to help a man he absolutely loathes, purely for the sake of a friend who is lying straight to his face.
And you, the reader, are left with the very uncomfortable realization that Dr. Jekyll, the supposed pillar of society, is not actually a victim of Mr. Hyde.
At least not yet.
He is his chief facilitator.
That is such a chilling thought to end on. But I want to leave you with one final thing to mull over as we close the book on this chapter today.
Think about the science.
Exactly. We heard Jekyll completely dismiss Lanyon's concerns as mere scientific heresies. Now we live in a world governed by strict rules. Gravity, biology, cause and effect.
The natural order.
What kind of heresy is so profoundly powerful that it could turn a highly respectable doctor into a man who goes deathly pale at the mere mention of his own beneficiary?
And more importantly,
if he truly can be rid of Mr. Hyde whenever he chooses, why hasn't he done it yet?
because sometimes the very things we boldly claim we can control are the things that already control us.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the shadowy mind of Dr. Jekyll. We'll see you next time as we continue to peel back the layers of this creeping mystery.